Hi there, welcome to IndyCar on the 25th of June today. I'm sorry I'm having to broadcast on my own personal page these days, but the interference from the United Kingdom spooks is getting so bad that it was almost impossible to broadcast a normal live stream in the way I'm used to doing. So welcome to IndyCar on my personal page. It's the only way I can really get the message out without the signal being tampered with. Today's subject, I'd like to look at the legality of independence, and also the assertion that's been made in the English press that there's no legal route to Scottish independence, that for some reason or other England has the right to legally block independence through its so-called Supreme Court. As you're probably aware, since the Act of Union in 1707, Scottish law and English law have been separate, and neither has had jurisdiction in the other's territory, which means that England cannot make laws about Scotland, and Scotland cannot make laws about England and cannot enact them in each other's territories. The two legal systems are separate, and they were separate by agreement, and that agreement is a fundamental part of the Act of Union and the Treaty of Union. And that has gone on for 300 years, and it's not changing. So why does the English media somehow seem to think that the English High Court has some kind of supremacy over what happens in Scotland? Well, that's because they claim that Scotland's courts and its legal system has no jurisdiction over what they call constitutional affairs or constitutional matters. Now, you probably also know that the British state, as it is at the moment, the United Kingdom, has no written constitution. That means it has no constitution. It has a whole lot of constitutional laws and conventions and other things that kind of loosely hold the place together, but all of it is movable furniture, and all of it can be changed at the stroke of a pen. So England has very cleverly, over the last 300 years, manipulated the system so that it can always change the rules before anything Scotland does can happen. And they think that that has meant that they've stopped independence with a High Court decision. However, I was listening, I don't know about you, I sometimes listen to things like the Reith Lectures, and I was particularly listening to Mr. Sumption, the High Court judge, who was giving the Reith lecture on law and politics. And what he was observing was the fact that law is beginning to interfere more in politics and in political decisions. And there are attempts by certain governments to use the law as a way of controlling politics, of restricting people's political freedoms. And this is what I need to talk to you about today. Just because we can't get the English government to agree to sign a Section 30 order does not mean that we cannot have a legal and binding and watertight referendum on our own independence. And I say referendum, and I know the reason why the SNP prefers a referendum to any other method of choosing independence. It's simply because if we had a Scottish election to decide independence, we would be up against the heavily skewed and specially arranged system of partial first past the post and partial dehont voting system, which is designed specifically to prevent the Scottish National Party from getting an overall majority of seats. It ensures that in perpetuity that the tiny minority of UK parties that exist in Scotland will always have some representation. So it's very hard for us to use that system as it's currently been skewed. It's been artificially stacked to prevent us getting a majority to try and get our independence. We could do it, but it would be difficult. And if we went for a general election in the UK sense of the word, then we would lose a large proportion of our electorate, an electorate which would normally vote for independence in a majority, and that would be European Union members who are now Scottish citizens who are living here and working here, and also teenagers from the age of 16 to 18 who would not be allowed to vote in a general election. So neither of these election sort of routes are perfect for giving a true indication of the real voters' opinions about independence. The only way to get that full representation is to have a legal referendum using existing technology if necessary, but also using the same question and the same rules as before. The only thing I think that we need to do differently would be to prevent the postal votes from getting out of our sight and be able to see those being opened and counted at the same time as regular votes. But anyway, enough of that. That's the technicality. The point is that a referendum is a preferred method because it gives the maximum amount of franchise to the maximum number of voters, so we get a true, clear picture. Now, obviously, the English government doesn't want that to happen because they know that the 16 and 17-year-olds and the European Union members will want to vote for independence because it is a way of staying in Europe. And most young people want to stay in Europe, and most Europeans want to stay in the European Union for the reasons that are obvious. Can a Scottish referendum be declared illegal by England? Well, actually, no, it can't, because it's never been tested. The English government has accepted the claim of right, which is a law. It's a piece of legislation, a written declaration, which says that the Scottish people always have the sovereign right to choose the form of government which is best suited to their needs. Now that's an interesting set of words, but what it means is that the Scottish people are sovereign, not the Parliament, not the Queen, and not Westminster. The Westminster system accepts that the Westminster Parliament is sovereign under the Crown, but it's Parliament which is sovereign in England, but in Scotland it's the people. And this difference between the constitutional values and the constitutional position is something that's been argued over for centuries, but it's never been tested. If we do have a vote and we vote to leave and the English government disagrees with that, it does not make it an illegal referendum. We're not Catalonia, we are a country. We've been a country for years, decades, millennia, right? We've been a country since before the 1320 Declaration of Arbroath. And since, obviously, we're still a country. But we're supposed to be in a union with England, not with the UK, with England only. So England says that it can leave the union at any time. We can leave the union at any time. There is nothing in the Acts and Treaties of Union that prevents either side from leaving if they wish. But at the moment we are being asked to believe that England can stop us and that their law would trump anything that we do. But can one country's law make the democracy of another country illegal? No. Under international law that's not possible because under international law one country cannot interfere in the democracy of another. And where you have two countries in a union, and where one country decides that it doesn't want to be in that union anymore and wants to dissolve the treaty or revoke the treaty and have some new arrangement, that one country has the right to vote on that because it's a signatory to a treaty between two countries, not just one. It's not just the UK, it's two countries, Scotland and England. England, Ireland and Wales, the conglomeration of bits of these islands which makes up the United Kingdom, is a construct of countries. It's not one single unitary nation. It's a construct. And that's the important thing. We can't afford to not have a referendum on this. We can't afford not to decide this now because the imperative is Brexit is going to wreck our country if we let it. A gentleman came on Twitter last night and said that he was a firm no voter and he had never tweeted before. But he was tweeting to say that he has now changed his stance from being against independence to being for it, for the simple, expedient reasons that Brexit is going to destroy everything that the country stands for. It's going to destroy the economy, it's going to destroy our industries, it's going to throw millions of people onto the dole. And he also said it was because we were going to be stuck with people like Boris Johnson running the country. So this guy, being a firm no voter, switched over. This is not the first story I've heard, incidentally. Is changing his mind. So, to my mind at least, we have to show that democracy trumps English law. Because democracy is not national, it's an internationally recognised system of government. And a full democracy, like we have in Scotland, is a legal right for everybody. It's a legal right for English people, it's a legal right for Scottish people to vote on what they want. And if we have a referendum under the aegis of our Parliament deciding on a referendum whether English government likes this or not, it is our right to have that. It's our right to make that decision. Then, after we've decided that we want independence, the negotiations on horse trading begin. If England refuses to accept our independence, we go to a higher authority. Since we're still in the EU, we would go to the EU. If this happened after Brexit, which I believe would be a mistake, we would have to go to the United Nations with this. But the EU would be my first port of call. And this is why I've always believed that we have to have this referendum before Brexit happens. I think that the SNP possibly thinks that the Brexit saga will rumble on for another couple of years and that it will be kicked, the can will be kicked down the road another year, another few months, and eventually it might happen. But if we continue to wait for Brexit to happen, it will never happen. And it will keep being pushed further and further away. It will always be tantalisingly out of reach. So we have to decide, and I think we have to decide now to get out while we can, and before Brexit is delayed or manipulated in some other way. We know that there are plans to sidestep the Scottish government. The English government has decided that it is going to, I say the English government, the English Tory government has decided that it will want to fund local Scottish councils, local authorities directly through David Mundell's new office. In other words, bypass the Scottish government completely and bribe local authorities with cash from Westminster. This is how the British government operates. It will simply ride right over the top of the devolution settlement and butt right into it. They don't even need to abolish it. They just have to invent some new law or rule that allows them to directly fund local authorities. And they will be able to bribe those local authorities to ditch the Scottish government in favour of the English one. And that is what is about to happen. That is the power grab. And it's going to be done surreptitiously and quietly and insidiously while we're all looking the other way and waiting for Brexit to happen. And we mustn't let it happen. I don't know how many thousands of times we need to say this, but we need to act. There is no need to wait now. Because if we wait for Brexit to happen, it won't happen. It will keep being pushed back. And our independence will keep being pushed out of our reach. We mustn't tie our independence to whatever Boris Johnson does. We have to vote now while people desperately want out of this mess before we lose all credibility and also before we lose the ability to take our yes vote to the International Court in The Hague to say we have had a democratic referendum in our country to end our union with London, with the English state. And we now declare our independence, and we would like the support of The Hague, of the court, to judge this as legal in international law, not in English law, not in Scottish law, under international legal obligations. We fulfilled all of them. And when we fulfill all of them, it doesn't matter what English law or Scottish law says, we will be regarded as an independent state, a normal country again. And that's all we should be, a normal country. We're not asking for special treatment, we're not asking to ruin England, we're not trying to do damage to anybody, we just would like to have what's ours back and to stop the asset stripping which has been going on for centuries. That asset stripping, by the way, is going to increase rapidly after Brexit because it will need to, because they won't have enough money to support the country otherwise. So that's my feelings on things at the moment. We need to act. I'm going to keep saying this until somebody does something. We've got to move. We've got to vote. And there is nothing illegal about democracy. And anyone who says different is lying to you. Trying to use English law and the English Supreme Court to stop a democratic process in another country is illegal under international law. We have the right to vote. The claim of right has been accepted by the so-called sovereign parliament in London without any qualms, without any question. They just accepted that Scotland has that right. And the claim of right is in English law. It's in that sovereign court. The highest court in England has agreed that we have the right to do this. So anyone who says any differently is lying to you. I'll see you later. Bye.